oh my god, that was close. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a 2011 BMW M3, that's the E90 generation, against the 2009 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. You may say, hold on, why are we comparing these two cars? Let me tell you, they both have naturally aspirated V8 engines, 4 liters, 4.7. They both have a 6-speed manual transmission, and they both are rear-wheel drive, just how we like. Now, these go for about 35 to 40K on the used market right now. Of course, depends on the condition, options, etc. Those are around 60K. And the question today is, which one would be the better fit for you? I mean, they're both great kind of GT vehicles. That one's going to be a lot less practical, but is it more engaging to drive? I don't know. We're going to find out. We got this Jerez black paint on bamboo leather interior. Competition package as well, which I believe this is the first year they offer competition package and the last year of the 4-door M3, if I'm not mistaken. We've got Öhlins road and track coilovers, front monoballs, solid rear subframe bushings, poly diff bushings, and front camber plates, giving us 2.5 degrees of negative camber. And we've got these Advant V601s, 245 section width in the front and 265 section width in the rear, 280 treadwear tires. And now, see how she drives. Of all the M3s, by far the best engine in this one right here, the S65 naturally aspirated V8 4-liter, making 414 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Both of these cars actually weigh around the same, 3,600 pounds. First impressions, we have a pretty upright seating posture, which is expected for a 4-door saloon like this. The last generation of M3 to also have hydraulic steering. All M3s, rack and pinion. We'll talk all about the M3 generations compared in this video up here and link in the description. I'm gonna press this M button. It's gonna give us more immediate throttle response and give us MDM traction. So we get a little bit of slip angle, not totally off though. And I think the modifications the owner has done have brought out the best in this vehicle. Because one issue I had in the other E90 series M3s that I've driven was that the steering wasn't as good as I thought, you know, a hydraulic rack of that era would be. This one feels tighter. It has more communicative feedback for sure. Ooh, getting a little bit slippy and slidey with my feet on the pedals. What you'll notice is when you have M mode turned off, the throttle response actually feels pretty lazy. But that's by design. You get this dual personality vehicle, right? Where you can putter around town, a little bit more relaxed, and then when you want, you can turn that on and have a much more sporty driving experience. Oh my god, that was close. Had a couple close calls today. Now, unlike the Aston, which is double wishbone in all 4 corners, this has McPherson strut front suspension and multi-link rear. What the owner has done though with these mods, the front end feels sharper than a stock E90, but it's still not quite as sharp as even the E46, which is also a McPherson strut front suspension, but smaller engine and overall a lighter car, smaller car. You definitely feel the heft with 3,600 pounds as you corner. She's playful. But as you can see right there, getting a little bit of understeer. Man, this is slippery. Speaking of the shifter, with my hand slipping right there, it is also that BMW rubberiness that you kind of expect in this generation of M3. love this car, man, is you got your family hauler with this naturally aspirated V8, and when it's dialed in, like Colin has done here, it just drives so well. Sure, you can feel the heft around the corners, but it's predictable. The chassis balance, it handles how you would expect when you expect to understeer, when you want to get the tail out and expect oversteer. Not many surprises. It has communicative steering, again, thanks to those mods. It's even better than stock, which stock I think is honestly a little bit overhyped. The steering stock is not fantastic, but this is a lot better now. And you know, when these came out, they were cool then, but they're even cooler now, because to get a 4-door naturally aspirated V8 is a very, very special thing. And I think for the price of 35 to 40K, you are getting a lot of vehicle for your money. Hot day out here in California, and the slick leather with my sweaty palms are not a great combination. All right, let's do a pull right here. As always, gonna be nice to the clutch. $8,000 RPM red line. Listen to that sound. Even the coilovers, these road and track Öhlins that Colin has set up here, they're dialed in just right. You're getting that communication from the car while maintaining the comfort. You still have good body control. This is just a really well dialed in example of an E90 M3. You can daily this, you can bomb the canyons, you can have a good time. And again, at the price point, it's not unfair. And now it's time for the 2009 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. So on the used market, around 60K, 20 to 25K more than the E90 M3. Now in terms of options and mods, this car comes with the Sport Pack. So we have stiffer suspension, we have a Velocity AP twin plate clutch, stage 2 tune, and secondary cat delete. We also have these Apex VS5 RS wheels, 19 by 10 in the front, 19 by 11 in the rear. 265 section width and 305 Continental Extreme Contact Sport 2s. We've got the V12 side skirts, the clear taillights in the back, and I mean, one of the most timeless and beautiful Astons, not of all time. I mean, we can talk the DB5, etc., but such a good looking Aston from recent era. Gotta love it. This metallic black really pops in the sun. Gotta love how these doors open up at an angle, so if you're parked near a curb and sometimes the road curves in like that, you're not going to actually damage this. Keep in mind, the transmission tunnel really encroaches into the pedal placement there with the gas. People have a lot of issues with heel toe. We've got the parking brake right here on the left hand side. A little bit of a learning curve to using that because it can be engaged while it's down, but I love this interior so much. Such a special interior. I love the gauges. It's symmetric. I mean, the tack goes in the reverse direction, but especially at night, it just looks so good with that brushed metal look. Get that symmetry, really nice steering wheel. Seating position, we feel a lot more in the car down low, more sports car, GT kind of seating position versus in the E90, of course, a little bit more upright on top of the car. That's a 4-door sedan. 6-speed manual transmission in both. And the cool thing about the engine in these 2009s is that they increased the displacement from 4.3 liters to 4.7 liters, and power went up to 420 horsepower and 346 pound-feet of torque. So that's an increase of 40 horsepower and 44 pound-feet of torque. It's essentially the hand-assembled version of the Jaguar AJ engine. Also hydraulic steering here, but this steering is so good. Nice and heavy. Really great feedback. Oh! I mean, that E90 has a great engine, But the acoustics in the cabin of this just put that to shame. Getting a lot of feedback through the wheel as well. Heel toe this. You have to be mindful of that transmission tunnel. God, there's something about British and Japanese cars that just really speaks to me. I mean, just listen to this engine though. Jesus. Now, double wishbone in all four corners, still the same weight roughly as that E90, 3,600 pounds. But you'll see this is front midship, so the engine is pretty far back. It's behind that front axle. We have a little bit of a slower steering ratio, I think. But the front end feels sharper, it feels more pure, if that makes sense. That's part of that is the double wishbone, part of that's the weight distribution. And I would also argue the better steering. But keep in mind, that E90 still has really great steering. It might initially feel a little bit sharper of a front end because faster steering ratio. And for an E90, it actually feels really good with that extra negative camber and those front monoballs. RPM red line. The throttle response here isn't as immediate as in the E90 with the M mode button engaged, so that also adds to the difficulty of heel toe. But there's a bit of a learning curve, but you know, you be intentional with it, and it's actually not that bad. You just have to not get your heel too far to the transmission tunnel. You gotta flip it a little bit harder than you might expect, and then it's not much of an issue. Suspension in the E90 better dialed in, but those are aftermarket Öhlins, Road and Track. This, I believe, is stock suspension with the Sport package, which is firm. For a GT car like this, it is possibly firmer than you would expect. So getting the tail to wiggle a little bit. Traction control cutting in. Eating into the fun. Should have turned that off. Not sure why it's not letting me turn traction control off. Maybe I need to be parked or something. Anyways. E90 actually feels a little bit more planted than this. Part of that's going to be the aftermarket suspension, of course. But with this, it feels like you can play with the weight distribution a little bit more and change the direction of the front end with the throttle and brake a little bit more readily at these lower speeds compared to that. I'd be curious what the weight distribution is. I would guess this is more favorable, better polar moment of inertia, closer to the center of the vehicle, easier to rotate in that way. And that feels a little bit more stable actually over some of these mid-corner bumps. This one I'm feeling it kind of shimmy around, especially at the rear. sub 100K really have a lot to offer. For an extra 20 to 25K, you're getting so much more emotionality with this vehicle. You're getting a higher degree of specialness, sitting even in the cabin, the engine note. I mean, just listen to that. Anytime you blip it, it just injects you with joy. In terms of the inputs, the brakes, they don't really have much initial bite, and it's kind of, okay, it's a GT, so cool, those brakes are a little bit more GT-ish, not as sports car. The steering though, the steering is pretty sports car, great, like very direct, great feedback, I like that. The transmission here is tighter, I mean you have pretty long throws, but it's not that rubberiness that you get in the E90. I definitely prefer this transmission, the shifter, over the E90. But it's not an amazing transmission, because when you're going across gears, like going from 4th to 5th as an example, there is a bit of like ambiguity and vagueness. It's not as precise and confidence inspiring compared to some other nicer transmissions. It's still a joy to use though. It's not a weak point by any means. And we'll do a little straight line pull. Neither one of these cars leave you wanting for more power. This is like the good usable range, where you can enjoy them, the immediate throttle response to the naturally aspirated engine, the power to weight ratio. It's usable on the roads. We drove some other vehicles today that have like 600 horsepower and have turbo lag, and then you're not getting, those are less usable. This is a good power to weight ratio and amount of power. I don't know, man, there's something about like Japanese and British cars that just really does it for me. And I really love a lot of German cars, but sometimes you don't get as much emotionality. But even this, compared to the E90, you know, the British versus the German, it's a little bit more serious. You can't really hear the engine note. It's a little bit more down to business, and I love that the personality and the emotion and the passion shows a little bit more clearly in a vehicle like this. And I think that might actually be kind of a philosophical difference between the British culture and the German culture. Like you see a lot of that clinical nature across many BMWs and many Porsches. Still a very fun vehicle, still a very special engine, still a great driving vehicle, and especially with the way Colin has set it up. But if you want something that feels a little bit more special, is obviously a lot less practical, but is also powered by that naturally aspirated V8 and really lets you feel that every moment when you're driving it, really front and center, then I mean, these are amazing vehicles. My friends, what do you think? Is this worth an extra 20 to 25K over the E90 M3? Let me know with a comment down below. Big thanks to the owners for letting me review their vehicles. Big thanks to Fenton's son from the Zygreen YouTube channel for organizing this comparison. If you want your car reviewed, visit us on JabalOnCars.com. Much love, my friends, and see you all in that next one.